Om Bhuva, Om Bhuvaha, Om Swaha, Om Maha-r, Om Janaha, Om Tapaha, Om Satyam, Om Savitur vareṇyaṃ, bhargo devasya dhimahi, dhiyo yo nah prachodayat. Amapo jyotirasomrutam brahma-muhurtā. This, as you know from previous episodes of Katham India and elsewhere, is the Gayatri mantra full version, which is typically used during the pranayama. As you know, the Gayatri mantra has a devata, which is savitur, which refers to our own creativity in terms of spiritual creativity. The physical manifestation of that is in the form of the sun, S-U-N. On the other hand, the rishi associated with it is Viśvāmitra, which is of great interest to me because he is very dear to me, being my Gotra Karaka. And Viśvāmitra Maharishi is somebody who rose from the spiritual doldrums thanks to Vasishtha Maharishi and of course Viśvāmitra's own tapasya over a very long period of time. He could change over from being a royal king to eventually a Brahma Rishi. In between many other episodes, as you know, various stories about him. The important thing is, apart from the Rishi and the Devata, the chandas or the meter, the actual melody in which this song is sung, to put it in a very simplistic way, is the Gayatri chandas, and this is considered to be the mother of all chandases. In fact, the oldest Veda, as you know, is the Rig Veda, and the Rig Veda, about a quarter of it, I would say, is composed in the Gayatri meter, the Gayatri chandas. The third chapter of the Rig Veda, if we may so call it, is almost entirely that which is perceived by Viśvāmitra Maharishi, and this is 3.62.10 is the actual reference to the shortened version of the Gayatri mantra which we use for japa. That is, only three of the planes of existence are referred to, namely the Bhu, Bhuva and Swaha. Now, many people just translate this as the earth plane, the intermediate plane or the plane of the mains, and the plane of the devatas or what is called as heaven. No, that is way too simplistic and is influenced by other religious thoughts, especially coming from the West. In reality, Bhu, Bhuva, Swaha are the three planes associated with our rajasic gunas, therefore the devatas. Bhu refers to the materialistic plane of existence that we are all very familiar with, probably more familiar with than necessary. And Swaha is the ultimate in the rajasic gunas as far as spirituality goes. It is that kind of a plane of existence, the metaphysical, just getting a taste of going out of our rajasic or passionate, ambitious gunas towards purity, hygiene, and all these sattvic gunas. It's like an interface thing. That is essentially what the Swaha actually means. Many people mispronounce it as Suvaha, which is incorrect. It is Swaha. You would see that apart from these three Vyahritis, as we call it, which actually sets the direction for propulsion, because essentially it's evolutionary process that we are undertaking, and this evolutionary process is supposed to have already transcended the 7 lower animalistic tendencies of what we call as the tamasic gunas and arrived at the beginning stage of the rajasic gunas, which is the Mooladhara chakra at the base of our spine, and then from that root chakra we move up to the Swadhisthana chakra and then to the Manipuraka chakra. Now this transition of 3 chakras is what we are talking about, and that's why it goes from Bhu, Bhuva and Swaha. Now, as all Gayatris do, because there are Gayatris for various devatas, but this is the original and the primordial one based on which the others have been set up. But typically for the devatas, you would see them ending with 3 different words: Vidmahe, Dhimahi and Prachodayat. Vidmahe essentially means vid is to know, Mahe is something great, so to know something which is great, and Dhimahi is through our intellect, we look at that in terms of its greatness. And that's essentially a meditative state. And prachodayat is to be moved around, which is essentially a propulsion. And that's the upward propulsion, or it's like rocket propulsion, vertically upwards, or a vertical takeoff, as you would call it in the case of a helicopter or eVTOLs, etc. So that's essentially the process that we are talking about, the direction. So this is essentially Shravana, Manana, Nitidhyasana. Shravana being learning, which is through listening, usually talked about in Vidmahe, to know. But knowing alone is not sufficient. Many of us know about so many things, but what's the use of it? Then comes the second aspect, Dhimahi. We reflect upon it, which is Manana, and that's where Japa comes into picture. So we chant it or recite it many a times so that we inculcate it eventually, which is what Prachodayat means, because by inculcating we are able to move up the spiritual ladder from the Muladhara via the Swadhisthana to the Manipuraka. You might be seeing I'm wearing Nava-rātri t-shirt over here. The reason is from every Amavasya, or rather Pratipad day after Amavasya, to the Navami, which is essentially what we call as the Shukla Paksha, or the waxing phase of the moon, is a Nava-rātri, the 9 nights. In other words, in a year there are 12 Nava-rātris, of which Sharad Nava-rātri, the one which occurs in October, November, all of you are very familiar with. These days the Vasant Nava-rātri, which happens in the spring season, March, April, during that time frame, is also becoming very popular. But there is a Navaratri associated with each one of them, and this one in particular is very, very significant for Devi because it occurs in the month of āṣāḍha, or what is called as Adi in Tamil, but that is a solar calendar and that will be a little later. But lunar calendar, what we call as a Chandramana calendar, it's from the Pratipad to the Navami of the āṣāḍha month, the month in which the Paurnami happens in the āṣāḍha nakshatra, which could be either the Uttarāṣāḍha or the Purva āṣāḍha, which is why this is named as the āṣāḍha month. Apart from these aspects, the Rishi, the Devata, and the chandas, the 3 aspects that we talked about, every mantra also has associated with it a utility, what we call as viniyoga. Yoga is to join, and niyoga is to establish that in a very special manner because visheshata. So viniyoga. And what is the viniyoga for the Gayatri mantra? It is japopanayanam. That means Japa Upanayanam. Many of you are familiar with the word Upanayanam, which is essentially stepping into the spiritual education, and what is also called as the Yajñopavita, when you start wearing the sacred thread from your left shoulder, showcasing the responsibility that you have, and it changes to the right shoulder when you're performing the Tarpanam for the Pitrus in particular. This is essentially as a Grihastha shouldering those responsibilities. And the Vedas, apart from being divided as Rig, Yajus, Sama, and Atharvana by the editor, Vyasa literally means editor. Each of these Vedas is also divided into Brahmana, Saṁ-hitā, Aranyaka, and Upanishads, or the Vedanta, by which it is not the end of the Vedas, but the takeaway from the Vedas. So what is the essence of the Vedas? And the essence of that in turn is the Bhagavad Gita. 362.10 is where this Gayatri mantra occurs. The use for this Viniyoga is for japa at Upanayana. But Upanayana is not just that event that we're talking about. Upa is close and Nayana is the eyes, and we're talking of the third eye. So close to the third eye essentially means that close to the metaphysical, going from the physical to the metaphysical. Meta means beyond. Of course, it's very famous with the metaverse these days, thanks to Facebook being renamed as Meta, the parent company rather. Meta essentially means, as we say in metaphysics, etc., something which is beyond physics. Similarly, to go beyond what is seen by the physical eyes to what can be seen only through the third eye, or the eye of intuition, the inner vision of who we really are, beyond the body, mind, and intellect as ourself, the Atman. This Gayatri mantra, when it is recited using Ganapata, as I said earlier with respect to other mantras, is amplified infinite fold. Already Gayatri mantra is the most powerful mantra that you can ever know or recite, chant, or listen. Now with the Ganapata, you will see that the power is phenomenal. So do listen to this, and you can also read the lyrics for it along with the swaras, which is the intonations, whether it's the lower tone, the mid tone, or the higher tone. And accordingly, you will see, if you just focus on it, how much of a transformation it can have, not only in a spiritual sense, but even in a materialistic and physical sense. So many people have found so many different kinds of advantages in a multidimensional sense by utilizing the Gayatri mantra. So may you also benefit from it through especially the Ganapata chant of the Gayatri mantra. Thank you. Namaskar. Hariyaṃ Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Gayatri mantra Ganapataḥ. Tat-savitur savitur tat-savitur vareṇyaṃ vareṇyagam savitur tat-savitur vareṇyaṃ savitur vareṇyaṃ vareṇyagam savitur savitur vareṇyaṃ bhargo bhargo vareṇyagam savitur savitur vareṇyaṃ bhargaham vareṇyaṃ bhargo bhargo vareṇyaṃ vareṇyaṃ bhargo devasya devasya bhargo vareṇyaṃ vareṇyaṃ bhargo devasyam bhargo devasya devasya bhargo bhargo devasya dhimahi dhimahi devasya bhargo bhargo devasya dhimahi devasya dhimahi dhimahi devasya devasya dhimahi dhimahiti dhimahim dhiya ya ya dhiya dhiya ya na na ya dhiya dhiya ya naham ya na na ya ya nah prachodayat prachodayat na ya ya nah prachodayat nah prachodayat prachodayat nah prachodayat prachodayat iti prachodayat